Hello, and welcome back to the Pyrography podcast. This episode is going to be about sort of mistakes to avoid, should we say, or ways to avoid making mistakes, if that makes sense. So, dive straight in. With burning hot spots, so a burn spot, shall we say, is when the nib is too hot and obviously burned too dark and too deep, which can be quite hard to correct if it's like really hot and it's gone really deep. There's not a lot you can do. If you get personally, I would, if I'd done that, which I haven't done in a while, thankfully, but when I used to do it by accident, you'd either get, actually, grab one. You could use an engraver, but if you did it by hand, just a basic file, really. I mean, I probably would use that one because it's one of my favourite sort of files. It's just, your triangle point. As we know, I'm not quite sure what to call it. You just sort of try and file it out as best you can. It will obviously have a hole in it if you burn quite deep, but you can also burn burn spots where you're obviously burning on the top. Unfortunately, I don't have an example. It'd be quite handy to have an example, wouldn't it? It's when you're burning and the nib almost sort of cools down really quickly on the beginning of the burn and then goes cool. That can create like a hot spot. With that, it's just sort of turning the temperature down so you don't do it again, but also so that you can almost sort of fade that burn out. That is also a way of avoiding or correcting, correcting that burn spot. There's ways to avoid getting burn spots. It's just sort of gradually putting your temperature up, sort of experience as well. I've been burning for a good 4 years now, like properly burning, in my opinion. But I did start sort of messing around burning, I guess, in 2018. So nearly, what's that now? Good 7 years of sort of doing burning, and not necessarily pyrography as such, but actually burning on wood. Good 7 years. So I've still sort of almost create burn spots, but due to obviously adapting and having techniques to correct it, I don't really see it as a burn spot anymore. It's just sort of that's a bit hot, turn it down, correct it. Don't really think about it as such. But obviously, if you're just starting pyrography, you might not notice it or not be sure how to correct it as such, so you might just leave it, and that's fine because you can learn from it. You can look at that piece and go, I know what I did there, I won't do that in the next piece. It's always good. That's why though I may have very few pieces like that, because obviously being a person that's like a perfectionist, I'm like, no, it's not perfect, I'm not keeping it, sand it down, redo it, or do another design. You can see behind me this piece. I'm not going to show it off. It's on pine, and I've not a fan of pine, and the image is too small, and I've learnt from that. That was actually quite a recent piece, I will admit, but I've learnt from doing that piece, image needs to be bigger to allow me to do more detail to reach my standards, and pine's quite difficult to use due to the grain, all manner of problems I won't bore you with. So that's hot spots. If you're still awake, congrats. I found that my voice is a bit drowly, sort of miserable. I don't know if anyone else notices that, but it's quite not stressful, but quite nerve-wracking, really, just sat in front of a camera talking about pyrography, trying not to ramble on too much, but trying to put enough information in. So I hope my voice doesn't become like miserable, I guess. Anyway, so obviously my work being quite a lot of animal themes, nature themes, I have to try not to burn too many like straight lines, because obviously, as you'll see in this one, Come on, focus. It focused! Yay! As you can see, this is quite an early piece, I will admit. The lines on it, not very natural. I mean, if you look at it from a distance, it's not too bad. But obviously I've burnt around the arms, so it doesn't look very natural, does it? It's sort of... Honestly, there's quite a bit of pencil. Yeah, to sort of keep that sort of natural look, obviously, fur doesn't go straight all one direction. Fur doesn't go directly straight, does it? It's got a bit of curvature here and there, goes off on one angle, and that's why when I'm putting a design on a bit of wood, obviously I use my carbon for the outline, and then when I'm doing the finer details, I'll do the fur direction, just so that I know the fur bends round or sort of crosses over. It's very complex with a Highland cow. That's why I don't like doing them, because I struggle to get that depth of fur, should we say, as quickly as I like. So I struggle to picture the image and where the image is going. That's why I don't do many Highland cows, but I'm trying to improve on that one. But yeah, with burning, try not to burn your lines too straight, because obviously the straighter the lines are and going in one direction, the less natural it's going to look. You want to try and keep everything sort of a little bit of wave, a little bit of bend, which can be quite easy if you're using like a flat nib. Try not to use like sharp nibs, like knife nibs and really pointed nibs, though you might be tempted to and think, well, fur's quite fine, I want to get a fine effect. It's actually the complete opposite, or at least I've found with doing the lions. Proud Partners, I'll put a picture on screen because you can't see it. I'll put it this side, somewhere here. I actually started with a smooth, like a rounded sort of smooth spoon nib, or flat nib, shall we say, and sort of did a base layer for the fur, just to get sort of fur direction on with the burner, and then went over it with the edge of that, actually, so that it was thick enough that it could be seen. Because if you use like what is described as a knife tip, it will be too fine and it will like cut into the wood and can actually leave like a flap of wood that sort of curves over, and it sort of hides the burn, and it's like really defines the line if it's not hidden by the wood. So that doesn't help, because it like takes away the depth from what you've put down as the base. You can use it, but sort of use it as a finishing sort of touch as such. So obviously with the lions, Happy Couple, when I was doing Happy Couple, the lioness, the first half, I was so excited. It was going really well. It was the first time the lion and the lioness like ever went well, and I genuinely felt sick with excitement. But when I was doing it, as you'll see in the video, it's just or at least with that bit, it's just building up the layers and then just working your way round. But with some pictures, I've started in one corner and just sort of gone with the flow and just done like a base layer and then slowly built it up bit by bit. But it's just about personal preference, sort of where the burn takes you, and sort of getting a feel for it as such. Not every piece is done the exact same way. When I did finish Happy Couple, I actually went on and did Family Stroll, because the way that I did the fur for the lion and the lioness, and then like the mane for the lion, made me think, oh, actually I could try that with bear fur. And then I did Family Stroll. A bear. I don't quite know how that equates. You've got a bear and you've got a lion. Apparently their fur is quite similar, or at least burnt very similar. So that's burning, obviously, like straight lines, and try not to keep it like too straight. Make sure you follow the fur, and obviously if you're following the fur, obviously the way you're burning naturally curves, so obviously just sort of 2 in 1 there, isn't it, really? And with doing that, obviously, like I mentioned, building up the layers, is trust the process. Just I've started so many burns and gone, this is rubbish, like gone to thought I'm going to just give up because I'm just wasting my time. But I've got the base layer. Just go with the process slowly, build up the layers, change your nib or in my case, I use one nib for like most of the burn, and then a few like different nibs for sort of finer details and this, that, and the other. Just change the angle of the tip just to get a finer burn, and the layers just start to build up and the image just starts to pop. So just trust the process, really. Or at least that's what I find in my case. I tend to build up the layers, and then like it develops the picture, and I can start to see where it's starting to build, and then I go from there. I just sort of almost work off what I've burnt. So obviously that's why I start with the eye, because I think the eye gives it its whole personality and whole life. So if I can have that personality and the life, I just build off that. So I don't know how artists and other people, like how other image artists, shall we say, so obviously you got your painters, your drawers, this, that, the other. I don't know how they do the eyes last. When I don't have an eye, I personally don't like the piece as much, or at least the eye's small, so small that I can't do as much detail as I like. Obviously, evidently by my self-portrait, the eyes, in my opinion, it's a good eye. It's very big. I think that's why. But if I did a couple more, I think they would start to get really detailed and like really like ultra realistic. It's not terrible, but it's not perfect. Just trust the process. Just keep going with it. Don't overdo it though in one spot. If you are going to build up layers, I find that gradually you'll like almost lose space. If you did like a small section, say under the eye, I found that over doing the base layer. So if obviously in my case I start with the eye. So if you've done the eye, and then you're starting under the eyelid, go from corner to corner, and then go, say you want to do, it's hard to line up my finger with the camera, say you want to do that bit, I'd go to about there with the base colour like that, and then just build up those layers. So you've got a bit of the picture below, so that you're not almost fighting with the layers you've built up. So it's almost starting with whatever shade you're starting with, whether that's the dark, or the light, or the medium. Do the base layer. So it's probably easiest actually to start with the light, because the dark is quite hard to go down from, or at least in my opinion, in my experience. So start with your light, do a bit more than what you're planning to do, then build up the layers, and then just work from there. And I find it just flows beautifully. But yeah, it's just about taking your time, not rushing it, just doing what you can manage, what you can cope, and just practice. Obviously I've been doing this now for 7 years, and I'm still making stupid mistakes here and there, and I'm still learning that, okay, this worked, and then I can do it on another burn and go, okay, that didn't work, maybe because it's different fur, different image, different angle, different light, different whatever. It's just about getting a feel for it. It's like driving. I think I've said this in a previous video. It's like learning to drive a manual car. For the first couple of lessons, you have to think about the pedal, like the changing gear and the pedals, and then after X amount of time, it just becomes natural, doesn't it? Same with burning. You'd start to burn, and you can get carried away, and it's just, oh, I didn't realise I could do that, which I found with doing Stronger Together and Chilling Jag. It just sort of went with it, and it like the image started to pop, and I'm like, oh wow, this is amazing. I didn't think I was capable of this, or at least this quickly. I mean, I'd been doing pyrography for a good like 3-4 years at that point, maybe even 5 years. 5 years. I think it was 2023 I did those two. Yeah, it was. Bloody hell. 5 years. Yeah, something just clicks. It's a bit like with dancing, isn't it? You can either dance or you can't. You can try, and you can do a half good job, but if you don't have the rhythm, you don't have the rhyme, there's no bobsled time. If you get that reference, we can be friends. But which coincidentally does actually link into my next point, not the bobsled, is using files to correct said mistakes. I've mentioned obviously using files for burn spots, but if you have should we say, burnt a line too deep or too dark, sorry. If you've burnt a line too dark, just going over it with a fine, small, obviously, if these are quite small files. Obviously, you can get sets where it's like for bigger files, and obviously these are quite fine detail files. Obviously, I've mentioned which files I use, which is this one, and then obviously the like flat plane one. Use like a fine tip just to go over the lines, and obviously you can use the flat one, or you can use it's whatever you prefer, but obviously I use this one and the flat one primarily. I might venture off and use different. I rarely use this one because the way the nib curves, it doesn't file as well. Weird accent come out there. With like using the files, I think it's quite self-explanatory. You just sort of, if say you've overburnt a line, you just sort of go over it. Obviously with filing off the mistake, which is quite handy, is if you didn't want to like sand it down, because obviously you take off a larger amount. And obviously using a wood file, you're taking off that small section. The only catch with that is you are then filing into the wood, which obviously creates a groove. It shouldn't be too deep. If you obviously don't press too hard, just sort of go over it. Obviously in my case it's fur, so it shouldn't be too bad. If you've overburnt, just file over it a bit, and it might require a bit of sort of burning around it, sort of blend it in. I can't really give much advice for anything else, because obviously I don't do backgrounds and stuff because they scare me. I don't like burning backgrounds. Come to think about it now, actually, similar to the burn spots, you can obviously burn consistently at a high temperature. The catch with that is there's a possibility, or a very likelihood as it happens, that the heat from the nib will actually expand in the wood almost, creating like a almost clouded effect around the burn. So it's, I think, referred to as like an overburn. So it's when burnt very hot consistently, and it's almost like the heat just sort of expands in the wood, and it's quite hard to get rid of. When filing, you like take a layer of the wood off in order to get the overburn off. It's literally just it's simple to sort of resolve as such. Obviously, you just turn the temperature down, go over it a few times to get that depth of colour, or you can use flat file, go over it. The only catch with that is if you've obviously done it through a burn, you can't go over it. But it shouldn't affect it too much, because obviously you've already burnt there, so the overburn shouldn't expand onto what you've burnt, but there's a possibility it could. You probably won't be able to see it that much, but it could affect a burn. I haven't found it's destroyed a burn as such yet, but it's a risk. Obviously having it at a high temperature and it expanding as such. It doesn't like expand, but it's like an almost expansion effect. But if you have done it, say like on a whisker or something, get your flat wood file, just sort of go around it. It can be quite tricky to go around it, because obviously if it's like a whisker, it's quite a fine line, isn't it? I find just sort of going over the burn, and if I obviously get the burn and like file the burn off a bit, that's fine, because I've just turned the temperature down and just go over it a few times. Perfect. Should work perfectly. I think that's it really for main mistakes to avoid with pyrography, and then obviously a bit about correcting it with the wood files. So that's all the mistakes I can sort of think of off the top of my head. They'll probably all come to me now after I've recorded this. But if you have any mistakes that you would like, or there's mistakes you're having and you want to ask, please feel free to comment or contact me privately. Either way, obviously if you put it in the comments, other people can see that mistake, and if it might help them, I'll try and answer as many as I can. But yeah, please feel free to comment any suggestions or any questions as such, or mistakes that you've made, and I can try and answer them to the best of my ability. But yeah, please feel free to comment, like, subscribe if you feel like
you want to watch some more videos, or at least, you can subscribe and personalize the notifications. It's completely up to you. But yeah, hopefully this video was helpful. It wasn't particularly the best, but yeah, definitely. If there's any mistakes or anything I've missed, please feel free to comment or at least message me, and I'm more than happy to try and help. See you in the next one. Cheers.